All right, we are now officially live and connected to the cloud server, which means we are recording. I see people rolling on in, which is fantastic. Brent Cosgrove, great to see you. Corey Leschler, Ed Tirakin, awesome to have you here. Jennifer Withers, Martha Corlier, Paul Scott, Rich Evans, thank you so much for being here. We had 215 people sign up today, so I'm hoping to get maybe at least half of that for the live part. And granted, the beauty of the virtual world we live in is you can sign up and watch this later, so no harm, no foul in that. Overall, just really fired up for the speakers and everyone that you have here. And one thing that I'd love to kind of prime the chat just to get it going is in the chat, when you think of SDG 14 and you think of water and oceans and lakes and rivers, in one word, what comes to mind? So I'll prime it to start and throw it in here, just kind of panelists to attendees, but maybe stealing Wallace's fire here. But one word that comes to mind is blue mind for me, and that's 2 words. But see some life, which is great. And so just keep putting some words in there just to kind of give us some context on what you're thinking. But it's officially 11:01, and I know we all have busy lives, so I don't want to keep everyone, but the plan is for this to be an hour, maybe an hour 15, depending how questions go. But throughout, please ask questions. I have some pre-planned questions for all the speakers, but we'll also be listening to you and want to make sure that you get your questions answered. So, hi everyone. My name is Kevin Sofin, and I am the co-founder of SDG Talks with my co-founder, James Armour. We created SDG Talks after the Unleash United Nations Acceleration Lab event to continue discussion around all things around the United Nations. All 17 SDGs are important, and today SDG 14 is just a little bit extra important because we're talking about it. But today with SDG 14, we're going to talk about the ocean as a place of wonder and awe. And I was fortunate to grow up on the Pacific Ocean. I've been able to go to the Atlantic, the Indian, the South China Sea, and I've seen a lot of it. And every time my breath is taken away, and I'm just thinking about all the interconnected nature of our oceans and rivers and lakes. So today we brought together scientists, entrepreneurs, psychologists, and more to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that our oceans face today. Unfortunately, the oceans right now have facing a lot of challenges, from climate change, coral bleaching, a dumping ground for human activities and human projects, unfortunately. And so we need to evaluate these further pressures that are happening with biodiversity loss, habitat loss, coral reef loss, all those things. So we need to start having conversations. And today we're going to talk about this and also hope to provide action and tangible connections for all of you. All the speakers are available and have really cool projects going on that you will have the opportunity to learn about. So again, I brought some experts in here today. We're going to do quick introductions of everyone. Then we're going to open up the questions that I have prepared. But please put questions in the chat and we want to answer yours. So without further ado, we're going to go Wallace, Danielle, Francesca, Sam. Quick little 60 or 90-second introduction about who you are, a little bit about your background to frame the conversation here. So Wallace, thanks for being here. If you want to get us going here.
And there. Hey, good to see everybody. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jay Nichols. I'm a marine biologist by training. I've studied sea turtles for 30 years and all the problems sea turtles get involved in, whether it's climate change, plastic pollution, habitat destruction, overfishing, bycatch, etc. But the last 10 years, I've focused on one of the topics you brought up, Kevin, which is the psychological aspect of our connection with water and oceans, lakes and rivers. We've left that out of our talking points. We've left it out of the value equation. And I think as a result, we undervalue coral reefs. We undervalue kelp forests. We undervalue coastlines and biodiversity. So it's my mission to make blue mind common knowledge for all people. That's 8 billion of us or so. And I will talk about that a little more. That's all I'll say for now. Hopefully that's slightly intriguing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jay. Daniela?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Daniela Castello. I'm Portuguese. I'm a marine biologist, and as Wallace did, I'm also have studied different fields in marine biology. I started with fish physiology and then cetacean abundance and distribution. And lately, I've been working with fishers and especially with marine pollution. And I'm pursuing a scholarship for my PhD, which is entitled The Perspectives of Social and Economic Impacts of Marine Litter in Coastal Areas. So that's going to be my next topic. But currently I'm working in the NetTech project, where we aim to prevent and reduce marine litter from fisheries. And we work together with fishers, but we also work in schools where we do awareness activities for these fishing communities.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Francesca, and Danielle, when you're, if possible, you can go on mute when you're not talking. Thank you. Francesca.
Hi guys, my name is Francesca Trotman. I'm founder and managing director of an organisation called Love the Oceans. We're a marine conservation organisation working in Mozambique. Our mission is to establish a marine protected area in our region. We're doing that through a bottom-up community-led approach. Lots of different areas of research and community outreach, fisheries, humpback whales, coral reefs, ocean trash, marine megafauna, turtles, and then 4 community outreach sections, basic marine resource management, teaching swimming, alternative livelihoods, and then our sustainable fishing project. I always forget one of those. My academic background is marine biology. My specialty is fisheries. I did my master's on the Erasmus rank, the shark fisheries of Mozambique. Now I kind of dabble in all of the research that we do, which I love. I get to like put my toe in the water with a lot of different things, but yeah, fisheries is really my kind of forte. So that's my background.
Awesome. Thanks, Francesca. And to round us out, Sam.
Good day, everyone. My name's Sam Teicher. I'm the co-founder and chief reef officer of Coral Vita, which is a social enterprise working to scale reef restoration around the world. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., definitely not the first place that comes to mind when we think about coral reefs, but I've been a scuba diver my whole life, have always loved the ocean, and definitely didn't dream I'd grow up to become a coral farmer. And it frankly is kind of ridiculous that we live in a world where reef restoration is even necessary. But that's why we started Coral Vita. So we grow coral up to 50 times faster than nature and strengthen corals' resilience to threats like warming and acidifying oceans before putting those corals back out into degraded reefs. And then on top of that, we're sort of deploying a business model. So putting aside our collective love for the ocean, that argument unfortunately doesn't work for most people. And while the best thing to do for coral reefs is to stop killing them, that's also not happening quickly or at the scale required. So what we do is we sell reef restoration as a service to all customers that depend on reefs tourism and coastal protection and fisheries benefits. Our farms are largely based on land, so we turn them into education centers for local communities as well as tourism attractions, and then try to use that funding to unlock what's required to do ecosystem scale restoration. So farm number 1 is where I'm at calling in from right now, Freeport, Grand Bahama. Ultimately plan to launch coral farms in every nation around the world, working with scientists, communities, governments, the private sector, to keep these ecosystems we love and all rely on alive for future generations.
Sam, that's amazing. Chief Reef Officer. That's definitely the coolest title that I've heard in a long time, and something that I will strive to maybe be the reef intern or something someday. But I think you all paint a nice picture about the interconnected nature of the ocean. There's so many different factors going into this, and arguably one of the biggest ones is us, people, human involvement, causing all sorts of different challenges and obstacles for the ocean. And one thing that I would think be helpful to paint a picture to everyone in the audience is to give some insights to the biggest challenges and threats that face our ocean. I want to talk about that first, and then we can better address solutions and projects. And for all the speakers, I mentioned this before, but I want this to be organized pandemonium where we're all kind of interjecting and jumping on top of each other in a figurative way. But so in this biggest threats to the ocean, in your words, if you wanted to start, Jay, what do you see as the biggest threats to the health of ocean as it pertains to SDG 14?
Yeah, so in the interest of creating pandemonium, I'll start with I'll poke Sam, and then maybe Sam can follow. So Sam said that love doesn't work, but then said, let's create tourism. And the basis of tourism is not that, it's love. So I think the biggest threat facing the ocean is that disconnect, and it exists in our academic realms. It exists in our agencies. It's alive and well. That complete disconnect, the discounting of emotional health wholesale across our organizations. A few organizations aside, we'll hear from some of them on this panel, in fact. But when we discount the emotional health benefits that are well documented by the hardest science in the room, not by philosophy, we undervalue our oceans, we undervalue our coral reefs, we undervalue nature, we undervalue biodiversity. And when we undervalue anyone or anything, bad things happen. So to me, that is the fundamental threat facing the ocean, is the fact that we systematically undervalue the ocean. So we can talk about overfishing, we can talk about plastic, we can talk about climate change, but if we're undervaluing something, that's the place to start. So I would suggest to everybody listening, update your talking points. If you need the science, happy to provide it. I wrote a book about it, and there's 6 years more research from places like Stanford University, University Exeter Medical School, and so on. So I think a better understanding that our emotional well-being, our social well-being, our cognitive well-being, our creative well-being is derived from nature, particularly the ocean and the waters, is fundamental. So I'd love to help Sam update the talking points around coral reefs, because I've seen veterans who are protecting coral reefs heal themselves while protecting the coral reefs, or friends at Force Blue. That psychological benefit is not philosophical, it's medical and it's physiological. And I think we can lift our whole movement up to the next level, get out of the 1980s talking points and get up to the 2020s talking points by incorporating blue mind science. So that was a lot of blabbing right there, but hopefully it was provocative.
I like it. No. Listen, Jay, I'm actually on the same page with you. Like I said, the reason I'm doing this is because of my love, and that's why through our work restoring reefs, we also use the farms as education centers, using coral restoration as a way to have a greater connection with and understanding of why do we even need to plant corals in the first place, and why do corals matter. So I'm fully on board with love and that personal connection being on board. And I actually see Jim Ritterhoff from Forest Blues here, so I'm a big fan of what they do too. I would say the point I was sort of getting at, and this your sort of approach definitely applies to them, but I would say the key decision makers often in government and in industry who are thinking about bottom lines and other things, they should be considering love and the personal well-being, but I'd say they're the ones who aren't acting fast enough on climate change or habitat destruction and things like that. And I have found that they don't always respond to that just love for the environment. But in terms of engaging them, that's a great new approach. Hopefully that can be a new tactic. And then for the general public and for tourists and fishermen and whoever, absolutely on board with that. To sort of build off of that, I'll just quickly say, I think from a philosophical standpoint, one of the benefits of modern society is we've got plumbing, we've got all sorts of things that allow us to not, in many ways, interact with nature the way human beings did. We used to have to protect our environment because if we didn't have clean water, the towns and villages weren't going to be able to survive. So as we've stepped further and further away, I do agree that we need to also find ways to bring ourselves closer, because we have, I think, experienced a huge disconnect on that moral and just physical and emotional level with the ocean. So bringing that into play, and then the obviously climate change, I would say coral reefs shouldn't be dying. Like I said before, my job should not exist. There are many things that are killing them in that poll. All of those things impact coral reef health. Reefs have been dying since the 70s before a lot of the effects of climate change were really felt, but moving forward, warming and acidifying oceans are crushing them. And we're already seeing that. So all of the above, but I would say that really the whale in the room is certainly climate change.
Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree, well, with both Wallace and Sam. It's difficult, and I don't think there's a lot, almost like not a lot point of saying like which is the biggest issue, because all of the areas of science are underfunded. And whilst like climate change, definitely, like if we don't fix the climate crisis, there's not going to be anything left to be kind of fixing or getting back to health. But that said, if we suddenly fix the climate crisis or whatever, there's a million other issues that are all, it's so intertwined, right? Like ocean science is so intertwined. It's not one independent issue. You can't pick one and go, that's the one that we need to fix to be able to save the world. Like that we've got to a state in the world that there's so many different issues, and humans have used so many different resources and unfortunately polluted the world so much that we need to be working on all of these different approaches all at once. And that's why it's great that so many NGOs and so many scientists are working in this space to try and tackle these issues, and why we need more people and more money in this space, and to tackle all of these different issues, so that yes, if the climate crisis is fixed and we come up with green energy and the world turns green and all of that kind of stuff, and that's great, but then we've still got the plastic pollution crisis happening like right there, and a lot of animals dying, and we've got the overfishing crisis happening. Like there's so many massive issues that all are so intertwined that picking one isn't really the way forward. We've all got to work together on all of the different ones, and kind of come together on it. That would be my 2 pence on it.
Daniela?
So going back to love to the ocean, I was born in a fishing village, and what I would like to suggest is that people are going to defend what they love, but they need to be aware of the problems. So I would like people to, if they have the possibility, to grab some fins or some snorkel and just go to the local beach and have a look at what you have, and then you're going to fall in love for sure, or with what you see, and then you're going to start talk about it, and then you're going to defend it, and then if you talk about it, other people will talk about it, and then you can even go directly to your policymakers and local lawmakers, and then you can contribute to the change, to all these problems that everyone already pointed out. That would be my opinion.
It seems like I hear this word disconnect a lot, and undervaluing, and that it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. But in obviously we were all heavily impacted by this thing called COVID-19 that changed the world for many reasons. And I would love to know all of your thoughts on, did COVID accelerate or decelerate progress? And do you think there was lesson learned on all of a sudden, maybe on how we should switch from undervaluing to properly valuing oceans, safety, coral reef restoration? And I know that's sort of a fully loaded question, but have we learned in a good way or bad way about how to best protect the livelihood of the waters? So sort of open-ended. Anyone want to jump at that one first? Wallace?
I've seen in all the projects I've ever worked on, the ones that are successful are not the top-down ones and aren't necessarily the well-funded ones, as kind of what Daniela says. There's the ones that start with people on the ground and help make people unstoppable. So I've worked on sea turtle conservation and plastic pollution issues and marine protected areas. And the ones that have been successful over the course of the last 30 years are the ones that have that approach. If you alienate people who live with the ocean every day, forget about it. If you discount their love in any way, whether they're fishers, divers, whoever they are, forget about it. You can go to the Washington, DC and get a policymaker's attention for 15 minutes, and that's fickle. because they get thrown out before you know it or replaced. But if you build a truly grassroots community-based approach, and Francesca, you can speak to that, your work is fundamentally coming from that place. It's harder, it's slower. You got to invest a minimum of 10 years, and then you'll start to see the needle move a little bit. But that's where it's at. I see a lot of people jumping around, a lot of startup mentality, a lot of hackathons, and that's very surface and it's very brittle. I think it's that deep, fundamental falling in love with what you're doing, falling in love with your home. Again, it's physiological. Read the neuropsychology. It's pretty convincing that that's what works. Fear, guilt, shame, anger, and jumping around doesn't really save the day. So that's very broad, but it applies to sea turtles and coral reefs and climate change as well. But I'll defer to the people who are actually doing that because they're on our panel.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the kind of like grassroots aspect. Yeah, as Wallace said, grassroots is absolutely what we do and what we are. And I completely agree, empowering the community to be able to take ownership of their own resources is like the absolute kind of pinnacle of marine conservation and creating long-lasting change. And in terms of like the length of time, yeah, like our strategy right now is 10 years, but like we'll be extending that by another 10 years when we do the next strategy. So yeah, 100% it's a long-term thing, because it's a long-term change that you're trying to create. So for example, just to give a specific example on kind of our work with COVID and how that's kind of related back to our work in Mozambique. So COVID obviously has stopped the tourism industry, and we're in a very rural area where about 75% of people are subsistence farmers anyways, farmers and fishers. And the 25% that are formally employed are employed in the tourism sector. So when COVID hit, obviously that meant that those people lost their jobs, and the people that were dependent on them were also affected. So a lot more people turned to the sea to be able to survive and feed their families. And that's where we were looking at the amount of illegal poaching that was happening, and a lot of net fishing, and net fishing is unfortunately one of the most unsustainable types of fishing in our area. And so we worked with Gemo, who is Gemo Galimbo is the chief fisherman in our area, and Pascal, our community outreach manager, and Gemo spearheaded a project which we launched in 2020, and we're now in the second stage of it. It's a 6-stage project, which is transitioning the fishermen away from net fishing towards kayak fishing, which is, according to our research, the most sustainable type of fishing in our area. And on completion, the project will eliminate net use in about 16,444 football pitches worth of ocean, which is a massive conservation win for the area and for the community. But it means that every single fisherman can go out and fish sustainably with the equipment, because that's what Love the Ocean's role is in terms of providing training and sustainability workshops and the kayak and fish equipment, and in exchange eliminate unsustainable fishing methods. So good can come out of bad situations, and like sustainability is an absolute pinnacle of any kind of conservation initiative. So like anything like that needs to be built in mind that it needs to continue without the NGO or whoever is helping the government body, whatever. It needs to exist outside of that, and Indigenous-led, locally-led initiatives are the way forward. So yeah, I think grassroots are really important, and there's so many amazing NGOs like SAM's around the world doing some incredible work. So yeah, that's kind of my input.
Daniela?
So my opinion about the COVID-19 pandemic related to the ocean problems is that you have two sides. First, you have all these human activities that stopped, or at least decreased a lot. So you have less pollution, or at least you don't have as much cars as you used to have on the streets. You don't have as much people, let's say, polluting. But then you have, on the other side, you have all these COVID-19 packaging. You have single-use plastic that is used way more than before. If you go to a restaurant, you have to bring home, at least here in Portugal, you have to bring your food home in a single-use plastic package. You have, everyone has their own mask, but you see masks everywhere. If I go for a walk on the beach, I see masks. If you go out into the street, you see masks everywhere. And so COVID was good because it's going to allow the oceans to recover at least a bit, because everyone knows that you cannot just stop human activities, but you also know that the oceans would like some time to recover, and this is not enough, but it is a good experience and can give us some data about how much time do the ecosystems need to start their recovery.
Sam, thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'll just reinforce the importance of integrating and empowering local communities one more time, whether it's learning from traditional ecological knowledge to just putting best practice sharing into place from our end. Like I said before, the farms serve as education centers for everyone from students to fishermen to government ministers. It's been echoed before, that love for the ocean comes from often having a personal connection with it. And as well, we want these farms eventually to be managed by people from the communities who rely on these reefs the most. And so any project, even if you're not working in the environment, I think it's critical. You always got to come in with an open mind and sort of an empowering attitude for the people who are living in these areas. Just on the sort of the COVID front, there's, again, I think two ways, there are many ways to look at it, but the two ways I'll sort of talk about, one is sort of to Daniela's first point, is that if we give nature a chance, it can heal. But there's all the memes like nature is healing and all that kind of stuff. Not always true, but in many cases we saw how there was a lot of declines, forget about the ocean, in just asthma cases. And that wasn't just because maybe people weren't going outside as much, but because there was less pollution in the air from declines in car usage and stuff like that. If you sort of scale that outwards, we know that actually is, I think, pretty clear evidence that humans have an impact, and that we do have the ability to change things. On the flip side, there also were plenty of people that took advantage of priorities, especially from, say, government agencies shifting elsewhere. And instead of, in the case of the ocean, many fisheries getting a break, there often was a ramp up in more illegal and unregulated fishing because the enforcement mechanisms to look out for those things, unfortunately, were deprioritized or the funding had to be shifted away. So while we did get to see we can absolutely change how we value, care about, act on the ocean from the community level up to governments and industries and the media, that people still will also do everything possible to sort of take what they can when they can, which, you know, compounds a lot of the challenges that we're trying to work on. But I do take the optimistic approach that we still also have the ability to really make big differences, and not with a massive shift, but a conscious one.
Yeah, we don't need another pandemic to wake us up about the realities and challenges that we face. And I think you all painted a good picture about some of the optimism and challenges and a little bit of optimism. But two things I want to shift the conversation to is specifically to your all four of you on the panel's role on tangible examples of work that you're doing that is helping or enhancing the lives of others around water, coral reef, plastic pollution, mental health. You're all kind of got different backgrounds, but I want to paint a macro picture on the work that all four of you do, as well as then within that, maybe give a plug on what everyone on the call listening can do from an individual consumer level or from a partnership level. So again, that's a little bit of macro, micro. I heard the other day a telescope and a microscope type view on it, and when you put personally. So Wallace, you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, so thinking about things that we've done, I look back when I started studying sea turtles and working on protecting the black sea turtle from extinction. I remember if you sat next to somebody on an airplane and they said, so what do you do? And you said, I study sea turtles. They might change their seat to a different seat because they thought it was really weird. Now sea turtles are really cool. Like people have tattoos of sea turtles and they have sea turtle earrings. I know Kevin has a big sea turtle tattoo across his back. Pretty amazing. So, and same thing with plastic pollution. 25 years ago when we started on it, people said plastic's not a problem. Nobody cares. Now you've got rock stars and Kardashians yelling about plastic straws. That's, I guess, you could call that progress. There's much more awareness. We've raised not just awareness, but action and solutions. So to kind of take the lead from Sam there, that optimism is so important. If we just keep hammering on all the bad news all the time, we will burn out. We'll burn ourselves out, and then we'll burn everybody out. But if you find those optimistic stories to tell, and they're everywhere, in fact, it's not all bad news. Like the black sea turtle was on the verge of extinction, and now it's being delisted because of grassroots work with turtle hunters over 30 years. Same thing's happening with plastic pollution. Eventually, we've got a lot more awareness. We've got kings and queens and heads of state care about it. 25 years ago, they didn't. But as far as specifically, if you're looking for a list of things to do, action items, I'm not going to give you one. I'm going to, what to do. And that's my answer to that. I'm not going to give you my top 3 things to do to save the ocean. Frankly, you will forget them all by the end of this panel. That's George, by the way, my pup. You know what to do. The creative thing to do, just do it. Like the thing in your life that you know that you need to do that you're not doing, that's the one most likely that you're going to make happen. So that's it's not a dodge. I could give you a list of the top 50 things to do for the ocean, but you would forget them all.
I like it. And furry friends are welcomed. I'm unfortunately at the office and my dog's at home, but I know Sam's got his pup behind him. So dogs are always welcomed in these chats. There he is, just chilling, living the life. So Francesca, Daniela, thoughts, comments, macro, micro on work you do and things that other people can follow?
Yeah. So first, I would like to talk a bit about the work we do and about what things people do. It's going to be hard after Wallace's speech, but I'll do my best. Regarding the NetTech project, we work together with fishers, as I said, to prevent and reduce marine litter from fisheries. And because we realized when we started this project that the fishers have a really bad image. People say, because fishers throw everything into the water. And then we start working with them, and it's not like that. So it's true, they throw many things into the water. But when we ask them, the first question I do when I do interview fishers is, do you usually throw litter overboard? And they say no. But then you start asking, what do you do with your cigarette butts? What do you do with your food packaging? And they say, we throw it overboard. So the problem here is the definition of litter, because everything that is produced by humans is litter. And this is a problem of definition. So now we are working with them, and they're starting to realize that in the end, they should bring more stuff home and don't really throw anything overboard. But we are also working with them to prevent ghost gear. And we are developing technologies with our partners, the engineers that work with us from Portugal, but also from the UK. And what we are doing is that we are developing some acoustic tags that fishers can have on their nets. And if they lose their fishing gear, they can just find it with their phone. And this means that we are preventing ghost gear. And ghost gear, for the ones that are not really in this field, I can say that ghost gear is when you have fishing gear that were lost, discarded, or abandoned in the sea, And because they are made of plastic, they're going to be there for a really long time, and they're going to cause harm to the animals that live at sea. Either they get entangled, they can be killed with it. And so we work with fishes for this. We developed the acoustic tags, but we also did another thing, which is we developed these ROVs that help fishes to locate and retrieve the acoustic tags. And so these are two different approaches that will help to reduce ghost gear in the ocean. And apart from that, we also do the awareness raising awareness activities at schools in the fishing communities. So we have participatory workshops with fishers, but then we also go to schools and talk with their children. So the kids will go home and take the message. And so I think these are the main inputs that the NetTag is giving to the Sustainable Goal 14. Regarding things that people can do, there are so many, but Wallace didn't want to say, but I'm just going to leave a few, if you don't mind, because people are aware, but because everyone has social media now, there are so many documentaries in streaming that you can have a look. We cannot really say names, but there are so many that can help you open your eyes for these problems. Everyone knows that you should reduce your carbon footprint. Everyone knows that you should use less plastic packaging. If you go to a supermarket, I always tell kids at schools, because if you go to a supermarket and you see an orange, usually oranges have a peel. So just buy an orange with a peel. Don't buy an unpeeled orange in a plastic box. You don't need a plastic box. You're gonna throw it away once you're home. So there are these small things. You can buy small fish, local fish from local fishermen. So you don't need to contribute to the global warming, like buying fish from across the world. For instance, there are so many things that you can do. The cosmetics, like we didn't talk about microplastic yet, but everyone knows that microplastics are small plastics that can be in, for instance, cosmetics. Like if you buy a toothpaste that aims to whitening your teeth, usually they have these microbeads. Microbeads are going to go down the drain and then back to into the ocean. There are so many things that people can do and change their behavior. And once again, if you do small steps, like you cannot really change everything, but you can change the way you do things. And it's very important because Sam talked about it. It's very hard to change the industry, and the industry are the main they are really the ones that make the decisions. So it's very hard for you to change your straw, plastic straw, to a bamboo straw, but then you have the plastic industry just giving you a banana inside of the plastic bag. So you can just do small changes and try your best and try for them to change the way they work. Go for it, Sam.
Nature already designed the packaging around our fruits. Why put additional packaging around it?
So a lot of that was incredibly well said. So I back up almost all of that. I'll just throw in a few things and then one more sort of philosophical point as maybe a little grenade in the middle of everything. Bring back the pandemonium. On the personal side, yes, figure out ways to support local communities. I wouldn't say it's easy to find these, but especially community programs that are teaching locals how to swim. Having lived in many developing nations, it might be a shock to some people, but a lot of folks that live in what are sort of thought as pristine ocean environments, prime destinations for tourists, often locals don't know how to swim. There's usually some pretty unfortunate legacies of colonialism as a reason for why that's the case. But then you have a lot of fishermen who don't know how to swim, which is putting aside the safety issue, don't know how much they depend on the coral reef or what's happening to the coral reef, and therefore are disconnected from taking care of it. So from kids up to adults, supporting organizations on that front is a great place to start. There's always the consumer choices and whatnot. Voting, as boring as that sounds, makes a huge difference if you're lucky to be in a place where you can actually choose people that will not sort of destroy nature that we all rely on. with that in mind, I'll also say I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy that's been created where we feel like it's our responsibility. We have absolutely choices that we can and should make when it comes to reducing plastic consumption, or to voting for the right leaders, or if you feel like contributing. You know, for us, selfishly, you can adopt a coral, but support many organizations like many of the people on this panel and others all around the world. But ultimately, I think it's been sort of put on us like we should recycle, as opposed to the companies producing plastic should produce less plastic. And we found out after decades that recycling, in fact, often doesn't work, but we felt like it was on us as individuals, whereas it's not as much on industrial leaders or government leaders who have much more power and control to actually shift things. So that's not to say your personal choices don't matter. They absolutely do, especially when you are able to multiply that out and get other people caring and doing the right thing. But I also don't think we should all carry it on ourselves like that this is so much on us, when in fact there are a select group of people that really have much greater ability to change the world for the better than we are often led to believe.
Yeah, agree with everything that Sam just said. I think everyone on the panel probably does as well. Yeah, on that note of like things that people can do to help, on that kind of like individual action versus like bigger action, I think I say educate yourself. Like, we're all on the internet right now. We've all got access to the internet, which means we've got Google at our fingertips, and we can just Google loads of different environmental issues and read up on it. And you can also find the petitions and the government actions that are being meant to be taken in association with those environmental issues. So you can put your voice and put pressure on the government to make those larger changes, as well as those individual things that need to be done as well, like Daniela said. In terms of what Love the Oceans is doing and getting more people into marine conservation, we actually have a swimming program. Well, it kind of all, as I said earlier, like everything's so intertwined, so it's kind of difficult to separate it all out. But if I'm just talking about like the community outreach aspect of what we do, we teach basic marine resource management to 10 to 13-year-olds as an addition to the national curriculum in free periods in school. But we also do, so in those lessons, that's things like, you know, what are coral reefs, and like what are marine protected areas, and what is ecotourism, and how it can be used on a basic level. Obviously it's 10 to 13-year-olds. And we also teach sea safety. So what is a riptide, how to get out of a riptide, all of that kind of theory side of it. And that's because we've had a lot of drownings in our area, unfortunately. A lot of people don't know how to swim. And when I say a lot, I mean over 95% of people don't know how to swim in our area. And unfortunately, as a result, there's been 13 drownings in the last 2 years in our base. So it does kill a lot of people. So from that like basic human life preservation angle, it's obviously important. And as a result of that, we teach free swimming lessons on the weekends, and then we have an intense swimming course that we do in the winter holidays in August every year as well. And that kind of links up. So the kids go through the education lessons at school, which is around like the marine environment, and then into the swimming lessons at the weekend. And that's 4 to 18-year-olds, so a much larger age group. And that's beginner, intermediate and advanced classes. And once the kids get to advanced, they're offered the opportunity to become what we call an ocean conservation champion, an OCC. And an OCC is essentially an intern, like basically pretty much. So we partner with lots of different boards on qualifications, further qualifications. With our overarching mission of establishing a marine protected area, that means the job creation is going to be in marine ecotourism. So obviously being able to swim is an important part of being able to utilize that and get a job, but also other qualifications like diving and skippering and surfing and stuff like that. All of those ecotourism based activities are important to be able to get that job. And then once people have jobs, then poverty alleviation happens. And when you have a little bit of poverty alleviation and people have the more financial headspace, they have more financial headspace to be thinking about conservation. So that's kind of how that links in. But the OCCs themselves, they also run their own conservation workshops. And we've actually just literally a few days ago rolled out an education program with 2 OCCs every year where we'll be sponsoring them their high school education, because most people in that area can't afford that. So it's really important part of marine conservation. Like as Sam said, like swimming, even though it seems like such a tangent for a marine conservation organization, it's actually so important, because it basically goes back to what Wallace was saying right at the beginning about love and encouraging that passion in youngsters, because youngsters are the future of the world. And having people in Indigenous communities caring and experiencing, it's about, I think it was David Attenborough that said, like, you can't care about what you haven't experienced, or something like that. And we do, from the advanced classes, we also transition into open water and do like coral reef snorkeling and things like that. And that gives a lot of kids the first ever time that they've actually interacted with the marine environment outside of fishing and using it as a food resource. And so that completely changes things. Like Bento and Mario, the 2 OCCs that we're sponsoring this year for their high school, they joined our turtle patrol team and formed 2 really important members of our turtle patrol team. And Bento, every time a turtle nest hatched, was sending me texts being like, I love turtles, which is such a rewarding thing for someone who 4 or 5 years ago hadn't ever swum in the sea and didn't have anything to do with the ocean, and now he's forever linked with it and really wants to work in marine conservation. And that's really the future of the planet, and that's what we want. We need more and more people caring about the ocean. So yeah, like when I say it's all intertwined, it is so intertwined. Like everything everyone said on this panel all kind of comes together, and it's all equally important in marine conservation.
It all integrates, and everything is interconnected in some capacity. And I think one of the most visual things that we see is the actual marine life and the animals. And what I'd love to hear from all of you as well is from the eyes of the animals, the animals that can't speak our language, but we can see them, we can feel them, we can understand them. How can we understand the health, the bad health or the good health of the oceans? I know, for example, with the whole DDT crisis, DDT that was in our refrigerators, that ultimately we found out had this correlation with hurting the bird eggs and was weakening the eggs. And then ultimately, as a society, we took action and we no longer have DDT within the refrigerants, and we saw progress and we saw a change towards cohabitating between humans and the earth. So there is stories like that, but what are some examples of, through the eyes of the turtle, through the otter, through the shark, through the fish, of both cynicism but some optimism here about how humans can actually play a good role? Wallace?
I'll go with the optimistic story. I know there's a lot of sad stories about what we might see through the eyes of animal life, but I just want to reiterate that collaboration is so key. So when I've seen the most support for our work in the recent years from the pool industry, from the swim coaches, from the people who build pools or maintain pools, or so that, you know, a lot of people who are working to save the ocean are maybe learn to swim in a swimming pool. So reach out to them if you're looking for partnerships. Just, you know, you can't emphasize collaboration too much, because none of us is going to get anything done alone. It's just a fact. But my animal stories, when I was a graduate student, we put a satellite transmitter on a sea turtle named Adelita, that was her name, 223-pound loggerhead turtle. She'd been in captivity for a long time, most of her life. We let her go. She swam from Baja California, Mexico to Japan across the North Pacific Ocean. At the time, the first and only animal ever tracked across an ocean. So it changed the oceanography textbooks, literally. But we shared her track on the internet, which was considered career suicide. We were told, if you put the data on the internet, people will steal it. And I remember thinking, well, what will they do with stolen turtle data? Maybe they'll help. I can't think of anything insidious or bad they could do with stolen turtle data. So we put the data in real time. This is the early days of the internet. Millions of people tracked Adelita on her journey from Mexico to Japan. She swam right through an area that's now misnamed the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And I say misnamed because it's not great and it's not a patch. It's a plastiscape. So we gave it a weird, bad name. It's not a great patch. But she swam right through that area and opened my eyes to plastic pollution back in 1996. And then from there grew the plastic pollution movement, really. People weren't really paying attention much to the issue. People like Charlie Moore, who took his boat out to the garbage patch, just started ringing the alarm bell along with lots of activists. And so Adelita made it to Japan. We lost her signal on the coast of Japan, but she went back to the beach where she was born and rewrote this one turtle as my mentor. She taught me about plastic pollution. She taught me about the interconnectedness of the oceans. She taught me about the importance of sharing what you know freely and wildly without barriers. The idea that we can share what we're learning in real time. I mean, think about coral reefs or the coast of Mozambique, even the plastic pollution issues around the world. Sharing in real time is so important. And the world, especially kids, they want unfiltered content. They want to know what you're doing, how you're feeling, what you're seeing. And yet there is no substitute for jumping in the water. So you got to kind of do both. Get wet and kind of stay connected. But I learned all that from this one turtle named Adelita. So that's my animal story. If you want to, you can look up Adelita, Adelita, sea turtle track, and you can see the track. It's pretty cool.
There was a video of you releasing some turtle in the wild. Jay, I remember you showed that to me. Was that Adelita? That was Adelita. Yeah, we were so. Just to the grassroots point, we're out on a beach in Mexico, and I had in one hand I had a beer actually, and then in the other hand I had the manual, which was like how to attach a transmitter to a turtle, and it was a group of fishermen, and we named the turtle after the daughter of a fisherman, Adelita, who at the time was 4. Now she's a grown woman and has this turtle named after her, and took video of the turtle being released. And right when we got back in the boat, I was like, I got to see that video. I make sure the transmitter didn't just fall off, because that's how much confidence I had. Sure enough, it stuck. It stuck for 368 days. And but yeah, that little video, it's like. Can you share that video? Do you have that on YouTube? I'll share the link. That'd be great. Yep. Sam, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe Sam also comment on Sam might be able to comment on the results of the coral reef poll.
Oh, the coral reef poll, that's right. Yeah, so the question was, is coral an animal, a plant, a rock, or all of the above? It is an animal, but it has plants living inside of it. That's sort of what gives coral their color. It's what feeds them for the most part. There's micro algae that have a symbiotic relationship with the coral that through photosynthesis give them their extra energy. And then as they grow, their skeleton effectively is limestone. So it's an animal that has plants living inside of it that makes rock as its skeleton. So all the above one definitely gets a pass on that. Definitely a question we like to ask. Yeah, extra credit. There we go. The 2 things. One, I saw this actually just got dropped in the chat. For anyone that wants a also very compelling documentary that I think in the ocean space is slightly less controversial of late on Netflix, is My Octopus Teacher. Highly recommend it. It's a powerful story. You want to see something through the eyes of a person and through an animal. It's incredible. I'll quickly give a shout out. We didn't rescue. We rehabilitated 3 sea turtles last year that were illegally poached, and the sort of Department of Marine Resources asked us to take care of them at our core farm, which we did before releasing them. The thing I didn't realize is turtles really like butt scratches, because we didn't have any any organisms in our tanks, because it wasn't equipped to be that type of a place, to clean the algae that was growing on the turtles off them. So one of the turtles, which was named Daisy June Pearl, as we were feeding her one time, she just put her shell right underneath our hands and started like literally like rubbing her shell back and forth across her fingers. And from that day forward, she just always come over to get a little loving on the butt scratches. But we always, I think a lot of people like to talk about the iconic species like turtles and dolphins and whales and everything, and we should. It's not to sort of give them the love, but I think a lot of people don't often talk about things that we sort of walk past, like shrimp and fish and just sort of your casual things. So just a very quick story. I just remember one time I was living in Mauritius back in like 2012, and I got on a dive, and there was this one fish. It just swam with me the entire time, and it just swam right next to my head, kept looking at me in the eyes. Whenever I would turn, it would turn with me. And this was like 9 years ago, and I still like had this, really smile comes to my face thinking about how this fish was just curious about who I was, and it wanted to see what I was doing. And I think people like Sylvia Earle and often others, there's plenty of research done about fish have feelings, and so many dynamics that most people I think take for granted. So as we love the sort of saving the turtles and everything, as I said, as we should, definitely next time you get in the water, maybe take a look around, and if you see something that's might feel a little bit more common, actually, see if it wants to engage with you, because animals really do have a tremendous capacity to connect if we sort of give them and give ourselves the opportunity.
One thing about the My Octopus teacher that I want to recommend to everyone. I heard a human science expert, his name's Christian Masberg, wrote a book called Sense Making, but in there he has this quote called meet your end user in the savannah, not the zoo, where it's really important to let's say from a business standpoint or just a studying the ocean standpoint, it's hard to really understand the ocean in an aquarium. You got to go in the ocean. And so it's important to spend that time and don't go into an environment with assumptions, but just use your eyes, use your ears, and use your mouth to ask questions. But I just think going to the savannah, going to the ocean as opposed to a closed project is really important to get actual real context. So just a little insight there. But Daniela, do you want to give some further insight?
Yes, sure. I didn't have such amazing experience as the other speakers did. Well, I did an internship in a zoo, and they had a program with the pregnant female dolphins. And I had the opportunity to monitor. It was my first experience with a cetacean. And in the morning, so I would spend the whole night with the pregnant female, and I would have to record everything that she was doing, if she was pooping, peeing, wherever. Every time she was breathing, I would have to record it as well. But then our reward would be in the morning when it was time to feed. She would have to be, she would come to us and she would like to rub herself on us, because when dolphins are in the wild, they travel several kilometers per day. But when they're in captivity, they don't regenerate their skin, let's say. So humans would have to rub them to renovate their skin. And this was the closest experience I had with marine mammals. And that really made me think about zoos. And then right after, I started working in a whale watching or dolphin watching company, also in the south of Portugal. And I realized how much kilometers they do. We had this experience with orcas, and we were monitoring these families of orcas. They were spending the summer in the Strait of Gibraltar in the south of Spain, and then they would come in the summertime they would pass in the south of Portugal and then up around the Iberian Peninsula. And one time, the Spanish team, they put a tag on this male orca, and it just one day, he was able to go around all the Iberian Peninsula and lost the GPS track in the north of Spain. And this gives us an idea how much kilometers this species can travel. And once again, you can think about zoos. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I had, but since then I didn't visit zoos, and now I really like to do and experience the wild animals.
Thank you, Danielle. Francesca, any context about from the perspective of an animal and around conservation work?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, I guess the story I would tell would be one from a couple of years ago, and ghost nets. I think everyone knows that ghost nets are a massive issue around the world. For those that don't know what ghost nets are, they're discarded fishing gear nets that continue accumulating animals as they drift through the ocean. And that was the case with this net. So we had this net drifting, and we basically came across it because it still had a float attached, just one. The rest of the floats are clearly broken off at some point. So there was just this one float on the surface. So we snorkeled the top of the line and realized it was this net. But in Mozambique, you're not allowed to just retrieve these nets because they could belong to someone. It's all very complex politics. So you're not allowed to just put it out the ocean as much as you can see that it's a ghost net and that it had massive holes wrenched in it and all the rest of it. So we had to call Maritime and get them to come. So they drove from the city, which is like 2 hours. And then we took them out on the boat because they've got it's legal in Mozambique to leave a net out for 2 hours. This is one of the reasons that we launched the Sustainable Fishing Project, to completely eliminate this issue. But you're allowed to put a net in the water for 2 hours. So we had to like prove that the net had been in the water longer than 2 hours for it to be removed. And luckily, I don't know if you want to say luckily, but like there was a fish in it that was like super rotten, and there was unfortunately a turtle in it that was super rotten, and like that it was just like the shell and the skeleton basically left. Which was made it really obvious that the net had been in there longer than 2 hours. And so Maritime came out on the boat, and we went down and dived and cut the net off the reef. And there was a shark down there in the net, and I was like, oh God. I had my camera with me, so I was like, okay, well, at least we can document this event and try and like raise some awareness and get people to, you know, choose more sustainable food sources and things like that. And as I was photographing the shark, which was like upside down and just didn't look great, basically it was pretty wrapped up, I suddenly saw it twitch, and I was like, oh, this shark's alive. And so I literally swam over to my friend, because I'd given my knife away to someone who didn't have their camera, wrenched my reg out, and I was like, the shark's alive underwater. And my friend was like, oh shit, and like went over really quickly and cut the shark free, and it swam off and survived. It did swim off. It like bumped its way on a coral reef on the way out, but it did swim off, which is obviously pretty good, and it was less stressed than I thought it was dead. So I mean, the fact that it swam off was pretty amazing. And then we brought the net up to the surface, and that was awesome because as soon as we surfaced, you could smell that the net had been in the water for longer than 2 hours. So Maritime allowed the destruction of the net, and they destroyed it, not us, so that there was no kind of blowback from fishermen or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it's really difficult because there's so many different things that come into marine conservation, but that's probably one of my kind of favorite stories in terms of wildlife surviving.
I heard someone say it earlier, but if you give nature a chance and you kind of step out of the way, nature is incredibly resilient and can persevere. One other documentary I saw was Artificial, the Patagonia documentary about fish hatcheries and dams, and it talks about, I mean, if you kind of just let nature do its thing, it'll overcome. So another documentary recommendation, and we'll put together a recap here. But I do want to be mindful of time. It's 3 minutes past the hour. I think we'll end up going another 10, 15 minutes. But one other question I wanted to ask in open forum, and before I give everyone sort of a final mic drop, final call out to everyone, is this idea about humans as in our capitalistic society and humans who consume. One thing that I think about a lot is we have 7.34 billion people in the world right now, soon to be 9 billion in 2050. And I just think, how are we going to feed the world? Where are we going to put everyone? At what point does something have to give? And that's what keeps me up at night. But from this whole notion of companies who they try and do good, and Jim Ritterhoff had a question. He said, we chastise corporations for bad behavior, and then we criticize them for greenwashing to get involved. And then someone else had asked, can capitalism and life in the oceans coexist? It's this balance. I mean, companies need to make money in a sense, and provide jobs, but we also have a limited amount of resources on this world that can sustain human life. So what's the answer there? I know this is like a crystal ball and there maybe isn't an answer. Tough question, but I want to ask all of you because you have some knowledge. So yeah, Wallace, start us off and maybe keep it like a minute or so long.
Yeah, I'll throw my thoughts in here, but then I've got to jump off. Apologies. I'd love to go on for another hour. You guys are amazing to hang out with. So, I mean, to the capitalism question, can capitalism and life coexist? We are right now. Let's not forget, like businesses exist right now. Nonprofits exist right now. You exist right now. You're living and breathing on this ocean planet. So, we've degraded much of what we have in terms of the living world, but we also have solutions. So I think, we've got all the solutions we need. We've got a lot of smart people who are deeply in love with our home, who want to work, who have, everybody on this panel has devoted their entire life to solving these problems. And there are millions and millions of other people like us. So, it kind of goes back to what everybody said already. It's like the grassroots, the collaborative, the creative. Keep your head in the game. Don't burn out. Don't let yourself burn out. That's not okay. We care so much. We work so hard. Don't burn out. Turn off your screens often and jump in the water. That's the best medicine I know of. But we're gonna keep taking what works, and we're gonna keep getting rid of what doesn't. We need to build that political will, as Sam said. Vote. Don't stop voting. Keep voting. Keep talking, but be kind. I guess that's what I'll leave it at, is kindness builds a stronger movement. Making people feel really bad about themselves, divisiveness, that only serves destruction and further dismantling of the web of life. But find the common ground between the fishers and the scientists and the conservationists and solve problems together. So the only thing I've seen that works is the art of collaboration and kindness, really. And again, there's science to back that up. If you're into that, I'm happy to send you the citations about the neuroscience of collaboration. So apologies, I gotta bounce here, but thank you, everybody. You guys are. Oh, and one last thing. If you enjoyed this panel, support one of these organizations. The 4 people up here with me all have projects and organizations. Reach out and figure out how you can support them, because they've given their time for this amazing hour. Kevin has spent a lot of time organizing, and they're all doing great work. So support the people who you've been listening to for the last hour in some way, even if it's through spreading a link to their work. So that's important. Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
See y'all.
Appreciate that. So yeah, Daniela, Francesca, Sam, as part of answering my question and sort of a final comment, just so we can wrap it up here to round this out. So Daniela, Francesca, Sam, anyone you want to take a stab first? Daniela?
Yeah, sure. So I think that after everything we talked about today, the most important thing would be that people should spread the word about how important marine life is. And everyone knows why we should protect it. And we know that we have to make a change, and policymakers have to change, and the industry has to change. But then I really believe that if you do something good will come out of it. That's my motto, let's say, in life. So I think that's the main thing. Just protect what you love and spread the word. That's what I would like to say.
So beautifully said. I love that. Francesca, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo those sentiments. Definitely spread the word, have those conversations, have those difficult conversations with relatives that might not agree with you, that maybe you can change their mind because you are family, so you're in the most like the best position to try and change their mind on things. Have conversations, talk about it, spread the word, and support people working in the space, because there's a lot of work to do, but we're trying to do it, and we need more people to do it with us.
Right on. And Sam, round us out here, man.
Well, it was said earlier also, if you get the chance to get in the ocean, or bring someone to the ocean, or encourage someone to go to the ocean, or a lake or a river, just getting into water, it's really worth it for your own health and well-being and enjoyment, but also to further that love and connection, so that we can then have more people who want to work to protect what we all depend on. I think at the end of the day, I don't want to lose any biodiversity, but at the end of the day, Earth is going to be fine. The planet's going to keep spinning. Evolution will do its thing. What we're really talking about is humanity here. The ecosystems and habitats and climate that has sort of allowed us to go from small band hunter-gatherers to modern day civilization. That's what's getting thrown out of whack. And what we're really talking about is also our ability to survive and thrive. And so having people empowered with knowledge and love, and a belief that we can actually fix things, that idea of being realistic about where things are at, but also being optimistic about what change we can make. Go forward with that. Yeah, so many amazing organizations around the world doing incredible stuff. So definitely check out Daniela and Francesca's orgs, among many others. Hopefully people will be able to come down and plant a coral with us in the Bahamas one day. You can come down and sort of check out our farm and see it for yourself. There's also other coral restoration organizations around the world. If you can't get down, you can adopt coral with us, and then hopefully use that not just as a way to help us do the restoration work, but again, tell that story to others around why reefs matter and how we all depend on them. And coral reefs is my thing with plastics, marine protected areas, local community well-being. All these things matter and are interconnected. And often the ocean is out of sight, out of mind. It's right offshore. So much is happening right there. We depend on it so much. So lots to get to work on, but we can all get to work on it together.
Wow. Sam, Daniela, Francesca, and Wallace, who's not here, thank you all so much. I think that was a great breadth of showing the interconnected nature of the challenges that the ocean faces, but also the different solutions that exist. And I got 10 quotes from pretty much all of you that I can't wait to continue to repurpose. So thank you all for joining us here today. This will be posted, recorded and posted on there. And if you got questions, you can reach out to me directly. I put all the links to their organizations. But this is just one moment in time. It's what, April, mid-April, early April, and we need to continue to keep this momentum going. There's rooms on Clubhouse going. I know Francesca's leading a lot of great rooms. Sam, I know you're on there. Daniela maybe as well. But we're doing podcasts, we're doing webinars, we're in Clubhouse, and then also we just got to turn up the screens and get in the ocean and go get your hands dirty and get after it. So combination of all that, I want to thank you for your time today, and to Sam, Francesca, Daniela. Just keep doing what you're doing. We need you. And I look forward to connecting with you all again soon.
Thanks so much for organizing it, Kevin.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for your work.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
See ya.